Kakadosh Boker or Masechet Batra Daf Bava Amud Aleph 156a1. We were talking about when a child. You remember we spoke about the matana, whether it's going to be before the age of 18. So Ravachi came and he told the Imam, Hasha now, if right now he receives money because of a sale and you still said that it wasn't good, because maybe he's going to come and he's going to sell for too cheap. So kol sheke matana, he didn't get anything that for sure it's going to become a problem and it's not going to be considered a matana. Elmaleh, so this is where we're starting today. Elmaleh on the top of Kufun Vav Mudalef. Elmaleh, and he told him, tamech, and according to your svara, according to your reasoning, Zabin shaveh chamesha hamsha beshita hachana medizvine. What happens in a case where he sold something which was worth 5 for 6? So obviously he didn't undersell. You know very well that this kid was he's good. Yeah, he sold something that was worth for 5. He sold it for 6. So you're going to tell me now that it's going to be a good sale? For sure, Chachamim, it was like lo plug. They didn't make a differentiation between how much, meaning they didn't look into the thing. Oh, one second. Did he lose money or did he make money? If he lost money, it's not a good sale. But here he made money, it's a good. No. Chachamim come and they say, it's not a sale. Yeah? So he comes and he says, Ella barather, im lehu rabbanan. The rabbis have established, Tienuka mekarva datega bezuza. Children love money. They love hearing all the jingling. Yeah, they like it. They like kids. They love it. Yeah. Via Marta, now if you're going to tell me zvine, right, that it is going to be a sale, sometimes it happens, right, the lekuchot will come and start putting the dollar bills in front of them. And they're going to sell everything. They're going to sell everything. Okay? Fine. Aval, however, though, gabe matana, to do with matana, ilav de havele hanaamine, right? If right now there wouldn't have been a hana, lo avile matane, you wouldn't have given him an hana, you wouldn't have given him a present. Meaning, the entire purpose of giving a present is because you benefited from someone. You want to show appreciation, so you give a gift. Obviously, he received something in order to give a gift. So he says, so the rabbi said, you should do something. Meaning, obviously, there was something there, right? And therefore, he's going to help him with chesed or something. So, kilu, that's why he's giving these matanot. So, therefore, that's why you would still say that a matana does help. Meaning, even if you're going to tell me that a sale does not help, but the matana should. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, says Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Botkin lekidushin, legirushin. ולחליסה, ולמינויים, ולמכור בנכסי אביו, עד שיהיה בן 20. Yeah, what does that mean? We are going to check to do with bar mitzvah, to do with the ages of bar mitzvah for kiddushin. Meaning if somebody wants to get married, they have to make sure that they're going to be bar mitzvah. But if it's going to be before bar mitzvah, right, it's not going to be chal. Right? The same halacha would apply. He says for kiddushin. If he wants to divorce, right, he has to be bar mitzvah.
He's married, so he was bar mitzvah.
And therefore?
If he can divorce, he was married.
No, because the father could marry him off. Yeah? So he says, right? He comes and he says like this. He says, obviously we're talking about the father married him off, right? And which is meaning is going to be al-dat, the father. And therefore, now what happens is that he's going to come and he wants to get divorced. Which one? Yep, 100%. Okay. Now, what happens is, right, the Gemara is going to ask your question, though, David. Okay? So it's going to be Kiddushin for Girushin, Halisa, that's doing Chalitza, right? Which that makes sense, because it could be that he had an older brother, the older brother passed away, and now for Chalitza, he needs to be for Mitzvah. That's why you could have a woman that she's waiting for Yibum Shomeret Yavam. She could be for a few years. Because if Be'emet, let's say he had a 20-year-old brother, and he's a 10-year-old, and now the brother dies, Bar Minam, without children. So now what happens? Right? The boy has to wait until he's bar mitzvah, meaning the girl, she has to wait for the 13 years, whatever, until he's bar mitzvah, in order to do chalitza. Okay? However, though, to do with limkor b'nichseh, right, aviv, so therefore, Achia ben Esrim, until he's going to be 20 years old. So ask the Gemara, one second. If you need to be checked out for kiddushin, so therefore, what's going to happen to do with girushin then? How does he get married? So that was what David wanted to ask. It's a very good question. I think it's the first time you fine. So lo nitzricha, what are we talking about? He says, yeah. He says lo nitzricha ela leibum. He says, right, what are we talking about? He did a kinyan of ibum. What does that mean? Because from a 9-year-old onwards, if he does ibum to his sister-in-law, it helps. He cannot do chalitza, but if he does ibum, it helps. The numbers we learned in the Mishnah. Yeah, but I don't think it's that he did it. I don't think that we tell him to do it. But if he did do it, it works, right? Because it says in the Mishnah in the Zenida, Ben Teisha Shanim Echad Shebal Yivimto. Again, Shebal Yivimto. It's not much better that we tell him to do this, right? But if he comes and he does do this, right? So he says over here, okay, to do with the kinyan, it's already going to be enough from the age of 9. So he says, you have a Ben Teisha Shanim Echad. He comes, he has relations with his Yivama, he acquires her. The en noten get a chigdal, but he's not allowed to give a get until he's yigdal. But remember, once he does the boom, the chalitza doesn't help anymore. So the only way to get out of it is again with the get. So that's when we said that you needed the girushin, right? So it has to be with that. Okay? Fine. So he says, like this. That was the first case to do with why did we need to bring down girushin? Okay. Now the second one is that he comes and he says like this, right? Chalitza. Why do we need chalitza exactly? Why do we have to bring down about chalitza that we're going to be butkim oto b'chalitza? So he says le'apuke de Rabbi Yosef. This comes to exclude Rabbi Yosef. The Amar, but he says in the pasuk ish katuv b'parasha. To do with the concept of the chalitza, it's written ish, right? And therefore, since it's written ish, so obviously he has to be an ish. He cannot be a katan. He has to be an ish. He has to be a man. A man is from bar mitzvah onwards, right? Aval isha, but to do with a woman, ben gdula ben ktana, doesn't matter whether she's a gdula or ktana, she could do the chalitza. Kamashvan. So we learn from here the makshina nisha leish, that we make a kesh, right, from isha to a man. That means also the woman has to be a gdola to do with chalitza, and not like shitat Rabbi Yosef, but rather like shitat the chachamim that they argue on him. That means according to shitat Rabbi Yosef, the man has to do the chalitza only when he's a man. He cannot do it when he's a minor. But the woman doesn't matter. The woman could be even before, it doesn't matter. Right? However, though, right, we come and we say, no, we apologize that it has to also be a gedolah. Okay? Fine. So now he comes and he says, minuin. What is minui? So we know that the girls that want to get out of the marriage, they're allowed to get out of the marriage at the age of shtemesre. What does that mean? That if they come and they said, you know what, we're not happy in this marriage, so we want to get out. Now, this is obviously that they were married under bat mitzvah, right? And therefore it helps mi'un. Now, this mi'un is done when the mother or the brother gets her married over. Okay, gets her married off. So he comes and he says, lemiunin, la puke mid Rabbi Yehuda. This comes to exclude shitat Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because according to him, he says she could only do the mi'un even after the 2 pubic hairs, ad she'idbea shachor, until you have more shachor, right, than skin. Meaning down there, the pubic hairs, it obviously starts with 1 and 2 hairs, and then it continues growing. So according to him, he says she's allowed to do the mi'un until there's so much more black, meaning that there's going to be a lot of hairs, more than that there's not hairs. Until. It starts from the 2 pubic hairs until there's so much hair that there's more black than not black of hair. What? Then she can never do miyun. She can never do miyun. She could only get a get. Okay. But again, that's not really our sugya. But fine. So he says over here, "La'puk came in Rabbi Yehuda," but he says that Shilbei Shachor. Kamashmalan comes to teach you that Shmuel is coming to say that also after the shiura kavua a kovea of shte seharot, right? That she's still able to do that, not like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, the last one. Velimkor b'niksei aviv ad sheyeh ben 20. So he said that it is going to be until the 20 to selling in the property of the father. La'apuke miman de'amar ben 18. Because you remember we said that it was actually a machloket, whether it was 18 or 20. So this obviously, when it says 20, this is coming to exclude the shita that it's going to be 18. V'hilchata, what is halacha? Toch hazman kilifnei hazman. Beforehand is still considered before. When you mean that when you remember we said that there was a question whether it was 18 or 20. We asked, does 18 mean 17 in one day, or does it mean a full 18? So the halacha is that toch hazman is still considered lifnei hazman, which means that you need the full 18 or the full 20 according to the shita. V'hilchata, the halacha is also going to be like Gidal bar Menashe. What does he said? He said that a katan that does know, right, in Masau Matan, he could sell, and you don't have to wait until the age of 20. Meaning this guy's a feisty, he's a good salesman. He knows already from the young age, in order to, he's going to be believed. The Hilchata Kamar Zutra, the Lacha is like more Zutra, that a nar, right, he says, nar gadol, which is going to be less than 20 years old, he could still be me'id on Taltalim, but not on Karka. The Hilchata and the Lacha is going to be like a Meimar, the na'ar in this age, he could give a matana, right, of the matana, the karkaot that he got from his, even though he cannot sell. Meaning that even though he cannot sell, he could still give a present. And the lecha is like Rav Nachman Meshmuel in all of these halachot, which means you have to check for shte seharot, for kiddushin, girushin, chalitza, miyun, right? And before a yatom is going to come and sell the karkaot, we're not going to just rely upon the minyan hashanim. We're going to actually mamash check, right, for the pubic hairs. Okay? Fine. Until here we're clear.
I think with Shmuel, is he more strict with your
Mishnah on Kuf Nun Vav Amud Aleph on the bottom, right? There's a Mishnah on 156a on the bottom. Hamchalek nechasav al piv. Yeah, if somebody's going to come and he's going to be mitzaveh al piv. Al piv means valpeh. How do you divide the properties? Meaning he's coming, he's dividing his properties orally, nothing written. The Rabbi Elazar says, Echab bari ve'echab misukan, whether the person is healthy or misukan, right, is going to be the same halacha. What does that mean? So he says, Nechasim sheish lehem achrayut, properties which they have achrayut. So for example, karka and batim, kakaot, meaning houses and properties. Niknin, they're going to be acquired with how, right? Because of shaveh chazakah. With money, a document, or chazakah. V'she'en lehem achrayut, and anything which is going to be mitaltalim, which that's why there's no such thing as achrayut on them. And niklim la b'shicha, it can only be acquired through meshicha, which means that even if it's going to be a cholem mesukan that he's doing this, it's not going to help, right, without a kinyan, right, just like a matanat bari. Okay, now they're going to argue. Amrulo, so Chachamim come and they tell Rabbi Elazar, Maaseh biman shel bnei Rochel. There's a story of biman shel bnei Rochel, right? That was the father that was the father's name. Okay, this is the mother of bnei Rochel. Rochel was the father. Okay, it's a good name, yeah. Shaita. He says, Shaita hola, she was sick. Yeah. So he says, she was sick. So she came and she said, I know a person, his name is Rochel, but it's not his real name, but Kilu, that's what he is. Yeah? So he says, and she said, Tenu, yeah, he comes and he says, 100%. But usually Rochel, they give it as a negative aspect. That's why they call it a chilut. Exactly. Bediuk. So usually that's what we said. It means even though you're right, you could use it for the positive and the negative. Usually when they come and they say this guy's a rochel, they don't mean it in the positive light. Right? That's what you have to understand. Yeah? So he says, Shaita hola, she was sick. Ve'amra, so she said, Tenu kebenati lebiti, give this, jewelry to her daughter. Vehi b'shnim asar maneh. So it's going to be 12. We're talking about now 1,200, 1,200 zuz. That's 12 maneh. So he says, they came and they did it. Meaning, even though there was no kinyan, there was no nothing. That obviously is not it's not karka, it's not a bite, it's metaltalim, right? And still, what do we say? We say that it does go to her. So what's going on? Yeah. So only it does make sense, obviously. Okay. So he comes and he says, right, like this. So he says, Amar lahen, he told them, Bnei Rochel tikbere miman. He says, the children of Rochel which means that they were such rishaim that they should die in the lifetime of their mother, right? And therefore, we're not going to learn a maaseh that happened from them. Meaning, it could be that maybe we did it purposely. Why? They were rishaim. It's better that their own mother should bury them. Yeah, powerful stuff. Yeah, fine. That was the Mishnah. Till here clear? Oh. Says the Gemara, Tanya, we learned to the Braita, Elmaleh Bilazar Chachmim. Says the Bilazar to Chachmim, Maseh bimroni echad. There was a meroni echad. You know what's meroni echad? Very good, right? Or bimedoni echad, from Adon, whatever. Meron. Shaya Yerushalayim. He was in Yerushalayim. Vayu lo metaltalin arbe. There were a lot of metaltalin. Ubikesh litnam bematana. So he wanted to give them as a present. Amrula, they told him, en laim takanat shikne al gabe karka. There's no takana unless you do a kinyan agav. What does that mean? You take karka and kinyan agav karka, you could do that. That means while you're acquiring the karka, you're going to acquire everything else inside. You remember that's what we spoke about yesterday in the Mishnah Yomi, to do with that you could acquire anything which is metaltalim agav the house. Because when you come and you make a kinyan on the house, all the metaltalim which are going to be inside, you could also acquire. That's called kinyan agav. Okay? So, alach velakach betzela. Right? So he went and he purchased karka, right, full of stones, right? That's what it means, betzela, right? Echad samuch Yerushalayim. Ve'amar, and he went and he said, Tzifono, right, leploni. The north part of this karka sela slide that I just bought goes to so and so. Ve'imo, with him, me'atzonu me'achaviyot, 100 sheep and 100 barrels. Udromo, the south of this karka, leploni, to Mr. So and so. Yeah, ve'imo, right? Again, another one, right? So therefore, right, what happened was he wanted one person to come to make a kinyan for the karka, to be mizaked for the mekablim. And then agav the karka, you're going to be mekabel the metaltalin. So everything makes sense. Vamet, right? And what happened? He died. And they came and they, everything that he did, he went and they did it. So the question is, you see from here, right? He says that it's going to be that they didn't even need to do a how do you call this? A kinyan. So therefore, even though we say that Mandana Shchimera is not going to be Chal Bedibur. Samrulo, they told him, Misham Raya, is that a proof? Meroni Barihaya. He was healthy. It wasn't a Shchimera. He was healthy. So for obviously, right, it wasn't Chal the Matana without a kinyan, because if Be'emet he was a Shchimera, even without anything, it would have been okay. So don't bring me a proof from over there. He was healthy. Fine.
They made a kinyan, right?
Which one? So fine. So that was the first part of the Gemara. Now, the two dots, right? So they went and they said, look, the mother should bury them because they were such people. So it says, why is the Bilazar cursing them out? What happened already? What did they do? That ממש, הוא מקלל אותם. שאימא שלהם, שהוא יקבור אותם. Yeah? אתה שומע? אני לא מקלל אף אחד. מה אתה רוצה? Yeah? So he comes and he says this. He says, אמר רב יהודה אמר שמואל, says שמואל, מקיימי קוצים בכרם היו. Right? That means they were מקיים קוצים in the kerem, in the vineyard. Rabbi Lazar comes and he's going according to his reasoning. The time he's learned to Mishan Kilaim, Hamkayem Kotzim Bakerem. You're going to be Mekayem Kotzim, thorns, right, in the kerem, in the vineyard, right? Rabbi Lazar says Kadash, right? They're going to be asur because of Kilaim. Meaning, I would have, like Kilei Kerem. That means I would have thought to say that in order to be Kilaim, it has to be like another fruit with the grapes. He says, no, even thorns with the grapes are considered Kilaim. And therefore, the fact they're Mekayem, that means they left it there and they purposely had there the thorns with the how do you call this, with the grapes. That's called mekayme, right? That's called mekayme kotzim bakerem, and therefore it's going to be asur because of kilaim. Chachamim omrim lo kadash. He said it's not going to be kadosh. Why? Ela davar shekamu mekaymin, only something which the majority of people they keep. Meaning the majority of people they don't keep thorns. You throw thorns out. You get rid of thorns. You don't keep thorns. So if it was going to be something else and the majority of people keep it, so then yes, there's going to be a problem of kilaim. But if it's going to be something that the majority of people throw out, even if these guys came and they kept it, what do I care? It's not going to make a kilaim, so it's not going to become a sun. So Bishlama, says the Gemara, Bishlama karkom chazi, I understand if Rabbi Lazar is going to come and he's going to be Oser, Kyum Karkom in Keren. Right? And you say it in English? Saffron. Saffron. Right? He says, why? Because it's fitting for eating and people keep it. But kotzim, what are you going to do with kotzim? What are you going to do with thorns? Yeah? I know a lot of thorns, right? But what are you going to do with thorns? So he says, Amar Rabbi Hanina. Says Rabbi Hanina, Mai Tamad Rabbi Lazar. What's Rabbi Lazar? Sheken be'araviyah. Mekayimim kotzim basadot ligmalehen. In Arabia, what do? They keep the thorns. You know why they keep the thorns? In order to give it to the animals, to give it to the gimalim. So he comes and he says, so therefore, since, right, Rabbi Lazar says, since it's something which people are mekayim, because in Arabia, that's what they're mekayim, the thorns, because they give it to their animals. So therefore, that's going to be a problem of kilayim. Chachamim come and they say, yeah, but it's only in that place, not everywhere. Meaning here, you think anybody keeps a thorn, nobody keeps a thorn, they throw it out. So obviously, there, if you're going to be in Arabia, okay, I can understand, says the Chachamim, but not anywhere.
But they were going according to Chachamim.
Yeah, exactly. They were going to Chachamim, but he came and he cursed them. Yeah, he came and he cursed them. Obviously, they weren't going like his opinion, so he cursed them out. Yeah, you have to follow like me, not like somebody else. Yeah, you heard. Oh, yeah. Yesh kotzim. Fine. Amar Rabbi Levi, says Rabbi Levi, Konin kinyan mishivmena. You're going to acquire a kinyan from the shivmena to be mekayim matonot even b'Shabbat, even on Shabbat. Ve'lo lachush d'virei Rabbi Lazar. And we're not going to suspect for Rabbi Lazar. Ela shema titrof tatu alav. Because maybe he's going to become a little bit crazy, which means we're going to be choshesh that maybe be'emet they're not going to be mekayim devarav after his death, and therefore they come and they say that he's going to go a little bit, like a little bit wild or whatever it is, right? In order to be mefis tato. Okay. Mishnah on the bottom of Kultum Bava Muvet 156b, the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says, Ashkiv Mera, which is going to be Mechaleket Nechasav b'Shabbat, Devarav Kayamim. It's going to be Kayam. Why? He can't write. That means even if you wanted to say that usually you do have to write, here he can't write. It's Shabbat. So if he's going to do it al piv, it's going to be okay. Avalo bechol, but not on weekday. Why? Because according to him, he says that really be'emet, right? He says you have to actually make a kinyan, which means you have to write it down in a document. Okay? Exactly. Rabbi Yoshua comes and he says, B'Shabbat Amru, in Shabbat they said that he could be mechalek al piv, right, al piv, and even though in that time he cannot be makneh otam and write it down, kal v'chomer b'chol. So it's a kal v'chomer that you could do so also during the weekday, because then they have a better koach, right? Because he could be makneh otam, right, and write it down, which means he said the exact opposite. The first shita said only on Shabbat can you do this. On weekday, no. Because on weekday you have to write it down. On Shabbat you can't write it down. So okay, so I have a leniency for you. No problem. According to Shittat Rabbi Yoshua, it's the exact opposite. He comes and he says, when you do it during the Shabbat and it works, right? And even though you cannot come and you cannot be makneh, so kal v'chomer during the weekday that you could have done it written down, kal v'chomer that it's going to work, even though you didn't write it down. Okay, kayotze bo, and it's also the same thing, zachin lakatan, right? He says here, the person could come and be mizakeh for a katin, right? For a katan, right? Because since he cannot be koneh, to be mizakeh to himself, so therefore they said that somebody else can be zocheh for him. Then zachin gadol. You cannot be zocheh for a gadol, right? These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Meaning, according to Shittat Rabbi Eliezer, you could only be mizakeh to a katan. Meaning, I could come and I'm going to give you something. I'm going to tell you I want that David should acquire something in order to stop using the phone, right? So in such a case, right, when I come and I give it to you, right? So therefore, what happens is that you can only be mizakeh to David if he's a katan, right? But not if he's a gadol. Because since the katan cannot do it on himself, so therefore they said that you, the gadol, could do it for the katan. What happens if he's a gadol? Right? So for example, there is a question though, that for example, if Ronen Cohen here doesn't realize about the, what's a gadol or katan, it could be that he's a gadol, but also a katan really. Because if he's on the phone, he's considered a katan. Right? So the question though is, what about, can you be mizakeh to a gadol? So again, according to Shittat Rabbi Eliezer, no. According to Rabbi Yoshua Omer, lekatan amru, so kavachomer gadol. If right now you could be mizakeh to a katan, so kavachomer you could be mizakeh to a gadol. Just like before, Rabbi Yoshua came and he said a kalvachomer, that if right now you could be mechalek al piv b'Shabbat, when he cannot write it, kalvachomer he could do it during the weekday. Kalvachomer the same thing over here. Says the Gemara, matniti mani, who's our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda. It's Rabbi Yehuda. The Tana was learned in a bright Rabbi Mino. Rabbi Mino says, Rabbi Eliezer says, "Bechol dvar hakavim minei she'enu yachol lechtov אבל בשבת, אבל לא בשבת. Rabbi Yoshua comes and he says, Kuf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph on the top, we're just going to get to the Mishnah. And it says, אפילו בכל אמרו, קו וחומר לשבת. כיוצא בו, the exact same thing we learned by the זכין לגדול, בין זכין לקטן, דיבי זו דור זו רבי אליעזר, רבי יהושע אומר בגדול, אמרו, קו וחומר לקטן, so the exact repeat of our Mishnah. Now he comes and he says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, בשבת ורק במבנה שאני יכול לכתוב, אבל לא בכל. Rabbi Yoshua אומר, בשבת אמרו, קו וחומר בכל. So you see from here, when it says here, Rabbi Yehuda is saying this, meaning Rabbi Yehuda is explaining that this is a machloka between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. So if somebody is going to ask you, who's our Mishnah? It's Rabbi Yehuda. וכיוצא בו זכי לקטן וזכי לגדול, רבי אליעזר רבי יהושע אומר לקטן אמרו, קל וחומר לגדול.